and gentlemen, I take pride in introducing the greatest show on earth.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Gordon, and it's 2:30 on Friday, August 21st, 2026, and I'm sitting here in the studio ready to get going with the Uncle Floyd podcast, number 87. We're going to have some fun today. I'm going to talk about some things that are fun and good and great, and a couple of things that ain't so hot. So let's listen to the music behind me as I tell you that you can send questions in, like the questions I'm going to answer later on, to ufpodcast at sge-inc.com. That's ufpodcast at sge-inc.com. I print them out, and I read them, and I have a lot of fun with you guys. So this is going to be an escape for me today. You'll see what I mean in a couple of seconds, but let's listen to the end of the theme. All right, let's start off with something that I just found out a couple of hours ago. As many of you know, I grew up hanging around in Mahwah. That's where we lived at the time, from the time I was 13 years old on. And I used to, quite a few Saturdays, sometimes the weather didn't permit it. In Mahwah, the winter was incredibly bad. I used to go over to Les Paul's house, riding through the woods along the Ramapo River. I lived on Route 202, and down the Ramapo River was Les Paul's house. It was about a mile and a half. So I would go there, knock on his door, go in, have fun, learn some stuff, and I have a permanent scar on my finger from being taught how to solder by Les and his brother-in-law, Wally Kamen. But I think I've told that story here. If not, remind me and I'll tell it later. They just tore down Les Paul's house. The house that I used to go to, they just tore down. It was his studio. It was a video studio in the 1950s for doing Les Paul and Mary Ford at Home, a TV show. And it's now totally gone. And if you'd like to see pictures of it being torn down, plus a picture of it in its heyday when it was really a beautiful home, I've posted it on Facebook. And I'm sure my guys, Melvin and Scarlett, are going to shift it around and put it on all the other sites that have anything to do with the Uncle Floyd show. So look for the pictures up there. But this was my comments on it. I'm sick over this. It would have been nice to have it preserved, but the physical logistics would make it impossible to have made it into a museum. I cannot picture a tour bus driving up Deer Haven Road to visit. Not to mention the amount of money the other residents had to be able to fight such an attraction to outsiders. Les chose that spot for the absolute privacy the entire section had. I have many memories being in that house studio, and that will keep it alive for me. The hours spent, the lessons at the hands of Les and Wally Kamen, the people I had the honor to meet on a one-to-one basis, and the music that runs in my blood and soul. Let's just hope the Les Paul Foundation uses the money to fulfill Les's wishes of spreading the love and enjoyment of playing music to young people. That kind of ticked me off a little bit. First, I want to thank Tom Mazza for sending me a nice letter and helping out with keeping this podcast on the air. And I appreciate it, Tom, and I just wanted to say hi to you. Speaking of Mahwah and Les Paul and living there, in the other direction, 2 miles down the road, down Route 202, was my best buddy from high school, a guy by the name of Gordon. Interesting character. His father was one of the engineers on the Manhattan Project, and he was highly technically oriented like I was. We were two of the geeks in high school. I used to go over there and hang out with him, and we'd mess around with stuff. One day, after high school, after Woodstock, as many of you know, I was on the stage crew at Woodstock because of stuff I learned at Les Paul's house. They hired me to do some work there because I could solder and do a few other things that would be very helpful on stage during a show that was lasting that long. Something would break down and I could possibly fix it. Gordon gives me a call the beginning of May of 1970, or it might have been the end of March, end of April. He says, look, I got an idea of a really great gag and I need your help. Can you come down here? So I went down. I took a week and I went down. I was still in college. He was in college. It was, like I said, post-Woodstock. And I went down there and he said, look, Billy Graham's going to be here doing some sort of big thing, one of his crusade things. And I want to have some fun with him. I said, how are you going to have fun with Billy Graham? He said, well, I talked to all the other guys here, and that's why I gave you a list. He gave me a list to buy a bunch of stuff and bring it down. Big reel-to-reel-up commercial wiring for audio wiring. A big roll of coaxial audio cable. A bunch of connectors, plugs, and stuff like that. And some junctions. I brought it all down. I paid for it out of my pocket. He gave me half the money when we got there. And he said, this is what we're going to do. Billy Graham is going to have the crusade in the stadium outside. Now, this is the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's going to have this thing going down in the stadium. We're going to put all the speakers from all the guys who are going to be in on this in the windows. And I want you to edit this tape. I learned how to edit by Les Paul, how to cut tape. Gordon had a large Roberts tape recorder. I'll post a picture of that on the Facebook page of what one looked like. We're going to hook everything together. Everybody's going to have their amplifiers hooked in. And I want you to cut this specific piece of music, this little segment out of a piece of music. And we've been watching Billy Graham's TV show, and he always does the same thing. Somewhere near the end, he says, if you have something you want to ask the Lord, if you want to question him, if you want something in your life that you do not have, let's all bow our heads and pray. And he would pause for about 60 seconds and pray with the crowd. I cut the piece of music. I put leader tape on it so there was no noise. It was just the segment that Gordon wanted. And laughing hysterically the entire time I'm putting this together because I know what's coming up. And he says, we'll watch it on TV. It was broadcast live on television. So we're watching it on television. There was no digital delay on TV at the time. Billy Graham bows his head and says, and now, my friends, if there's something that you wish to ask the Lord, a question, a hope, a need, healing, whatever it is, let us all now bow our heads in prayer. And he clasps his hands and he puts his head down and we play this.
You cannot petition the Lord with prayer!
Every head in that stadium looked up at the sky. There were about 25 stereo systems blasting this out from a building just above the stadium. And Billy Graham flinched, and you could see all the people looking up at the sky as this happened. That's one of my adventures of living with friends in Mawa and stuff that I did before the Uncle Floyd show. I thought you'd get a kick out of that, and that'd bring me up after the story about Les Paul's house. All right, now we got some questions from Tim Hanlon. Now, this is interesting. Wednesday, just 2 days ago, my sister and I went for breakfast at Matthew's Matthew's Diner in Waldwick, New Jersey, which is between our two houses. And we went there. We were going to sit and talk, just have breakfast and have some fun. We're talking, and my sister mentions about the Uncle Floyd show. At the end of the meal, I get up and I'm going to head towards the men's room, and a gentleman sitting at the table behind me says, Scott Gordon from the Uncle Floyd show. And I said, yeah. And it was this gentleman, Tim Hanlon, from Lake Forest, Illinois. He was originally from Hohokus, which is where Matthew's Diner is. It's actually in Hohokus, on the border of Waldwick. He said, I listen to the podcast all the time. So, Tim, I got your email. And he said a lot of nice things in the email about the podcast and everything else. And he says, it's great to hear somebody talk about what was going on. And he had a question. Might you remember how large the station group that carried the show in syndication circa 1982-83 was? I know WNBC in New York, WSBK in Boston, and WEWS in Cleveland did, but I'm pretty sure it was a wider net of stations than that. Yes, it was. It was stations all across the country, a lot of the NBC owned and operated stations. A lot of the NBC stations we were on across the country, the ones that were owned by NBC, bought the show. A couple other stations that were not owned by NBC had the show as well, including one in Phoenix, Arizona. This is Floyd's favorite story about syndication. All right, I'll get into this. Tim also asks, what were your specific memories of syndication adventure before excitement, during challenging, and after disappointment? Of course we were excited. We also made the album at that time, the Mercury album. At the same time, the syndication was coming up, and that was promoted on the syndication shows, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And during syndication, it got more and more apparent that the syndicators wanted to mold us into something that we weren't. They wanted to change it around. They wanted to change the feel of the show. They wanted to make it theirs. And they did this by having us do half-hour shows for Channel 68 and chopping it up and taking what they wanted and putting together half-hour shows and hour shows. Half-hour shows went to most of the places. The NBC owned and operated put us on after Saturday Night Live. So we were on NBC owned and operated after Tom Snyder or after David Letterman, who came in at one point, and then after Saturday Night Live. The guy in Phoenix, the station manager in Phoenix, saw the first show and got to Eddie Slabo. He immediately shut the show off, went out and said, "You will never see this show again on this station. We will never have anything like this. I am very surprised at George Back and the people who run Producers Showcase for giving me garbage like this, and I will not show it on my station. You will never see it again." When Floyd was asked about that later on, he said, well, what do you want? The guy grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. It's so hot out there that his brain is melted. From Mike Optenacher, I was recently watching a clip featuring Mr. Bones. The puppeteering was mesmerizing. Was that Floyd? Yes, it was, Mike. That was Floyd operating it. Did that come naturally, or was it the result of years of training and practice? Floyd had a knack with doing things manually like that with his hands because of his piano playing, which we'll get a piano song later on today. He was great just grabbing things and making them express. He could express with his hands the way he expressed on the keyboard. And he picked up Mr. Bones, and even though he was a marionette and it wasn't directly with his hands, he got the message across. It was great. From Michael Lepowski, I know how Bones Boy was a Halloween candy topper, but Mr. Jones is wild. He looks so much like my grandfather. Where was he found? Mr. Jones was actually a puppet, a hand puppet that was made. There was 3 holes in the back of it where you could stick your fingers in to make him express. And it was sold in Chinatown in New York as a Buddha head. And you could buy it in many different colors. You know, there was red Buddhas, there was green Buddhas. This was the flesh-colored Buddha. Mr. Jones was actually a Buddha head puppet. From Lee Shapiro, I can never keep straight all the studios that housed the Uncle Floyd show. So could you please list them in order and give the dates that the shows were in each studio? Now, I'm doing this strictly from memory. I don't have anything written down on this. I'm going to try. From 1978 to 1980-81, we were at 416 Eagle Rock Avenue in West Orange. That was the old Spooky House. That's where I joined the show in 1976, and just about everybody else who joined the show, except Michael Wright, he joined later on Then we moved to 980 West Market Street. Now, West Market Street was in Newark, New Jersey. It was the old Wiss Scissor office building. There were two Wiss Scissor buildings. There was a factory where they made the scissors and the office building. The office building was turned into studios and offices for the station people. And that's where we were during syndication up until the point where Channel 68 went off the air. And that's where all the TV 68 and the other stuff came from. From there, we went to we went to Avenel, New Jersey, which was near the prison. We worked there for a while. That was where Elaine Marta joined the show. And we were there until everything was set up with New Jersey Network. Jeff Friedman bought the set from syndication, brought it to New Jersey Network, assembled it in their studio at 980 Broad Street in Newark, New Jersey, where we did the show from there. After that ended in 1986, which is another story altogether, which I will get into sometime, but not right now, we had to move out to someplace else. Pat Marucki, who was a cousin of the congressman from the area of New Jersey, had a studio in Nutley. This was the OBC studio, Orecchio Broadcasting System. The Orecchios were the political family in the area. They had the studio in their building with their newspaper. I can't remember the newspaper off the top of my head right now. Again, I am working from memory on this. I may remember it and throw it in a few minutes, but that's the way it goes when you get to my age. We worked there for a while, and then it was a fire or a flood or something. Pat may correct me on that if he writes in. The studio had to close down. Jim Monaco, who did the show for a while, had an aunt who had a warehouse. The warehouse was in Woodbridge, New Jersey, and that was the most repulsive studio we were ever in. It had no heat, no air conditioning, a mud parking lot. I show shows from these places on the Tuesday night at 8. We have a date. This was the Uncle Floyd Show, which you can get to by going to theunclefloydshow.tv. That's theunclefloydshow.tv. I'll mention that again later if you want to write it down. We had to go there for a while. After there, we went to Heightstown, which was all the way down by Great Adventure, and we worked out of there for a while. That was a great little studio, and then we came back to OBC. We worked at OBC for a while till the money ran out. It got a little bit too expensive to do the show, whereupon Floyd would do a one-person talk show thing that he worked out where a band or an act would come in and they would pay to be on the show. Floyd would do the interview with them. They'd get a copy of the tape. That's the way that worked. And then Floyd took up a thing doing Uncle Floyd walking around towns and taping, talking to people. And then we went to Cablevision in New Jersey for a 100 show, Cablevision in Oakland for 100 shows, and that ended in 1998. Floyd kept the walk-around thing going for a while. When that ended in 2001, that was it. A personal favorite studio, I would probably say my personal favorite studio was the one at 980 West Market Street. It had dressing rooms. The dressing rooms had showers in them. It was actually a fine professional studio where we could work, and when there was a pie fight or something really sloppy, we could go and wash off. That was my favorite part of that studio. The studio that we didn't really like was Jim Monaco's. Oh, we also did a couple of live shows that were broadcast from Rascals Comedy Club in Ocean Township, New Jersey. I'm going to show a couple of those at the Tuesday night thing sometime. From Susie Tannenbaum. I just found a great half-hour recording of Floyd interviewing Mike Greenblatt about his heavy metal magazines from 1989. The title was The Floyd Show. I believe Pat Marucki was listed as a producer. That's correct. I just mentioned that in the previous question. Did this talk show air the same time as the traditional Uncle Floyd Show format or instead of it? It was instead of, Susie. And it aired instead of the traditional format. Where was the rest of the Uncle Floyd Show cast? We all had our own things that we were doing. You know, Skip was doing radio. Muggsy was working for Pat Marucki. He was on the crew of the Uncle Floyd thing. And everybody else had their own jobs. Charlie was working. Dave was working. We all had our own things that we did. From Dennis DeLeo. Floyd has been on UHF, cable, network television, and the like. Sometimes I would pick him up on my toaster. I'm not much of a technology geek, but in layman's terms, could you please tell me the difference between all these methods of broadcasting? The Bronx didn't get cable until the mid-1990s, but I still couldn't get the Uncle Floyd Show. I would have loved to see the later shows. There's not really that much difference between it. There's all the same type of signal, just different frequencies it was broadcast on. UHF, ultra high frequency, is much higher than VHF, which is very high frequency. Okay? And it was basically a encoded FM signal. It was an analog signal with digital information to give you the pixels for the TV screen, which is how that worked. And then cable was the same signal, but not modulated with the frequency of UHF or anything like that. It was basically a digital and audio combined signal that went down the cable that came to the house. Only recently has it become digital, and now it's ones and zeros, just like any other digital system coming in. I don't want to get too highly technical on it, because that would really bore the heck out of everybody. And from Fred Knapp. During his live shows, Floyd would sing a song with the lyrics, I don't want to go home, I don't want to go home, we're having too much fun. And 9 times out of 10, someone from the audience would shout, bull, something or other. I'm not going to say that on here because they look at it and then we'll get an R rating on this and a lot of people wouldn't be able to hear it. Floyd would then stop the song and mumble, ungrateful. How do you like that? Is there a story behind when this first happened? That is a classic American music hall song. It's done a lot in nightclubs. It was banjo parlor stuff and vaudeville. It was a song that's been around for years and years and years. And that sort of grew with it from audience participation. And a lot of people know that it happens. So Floyd would do it, the people would respond in the way they knew how to respond. It's been great being with you today. I'm going to hold off on a Gordon and Rogue because I told that story. We're going to have Uncle Floyd play the piano for you in a few minutes. But I want to remind everybody that you can write in just like these good people did. Just send your email to ufpodcast@sge-inc.com. That's ufpodcast@sge-inc.com. It gets to me, and I read it. Tuesday night at 8, we have a date. We're all together watching clips of the Uncle Floyd Show and a full show. I put on a full TV show as part of it with a couple more clips to fill in about 45 minutes. It costs $5, and that $5 helps this continue. This podcast would not be here if it wasn't for the Tuesday night show. The Tuesday night show wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the Tuesday night show either. This was The Uncle Floyd Show is the title of it, and you can find it at theunclefloydshow.tv. That's theunclefloydshow.tv. It's actually on Stage It, which is the name of the company that carries the signal and distributes it to you. It's easier for you guys to remember theunclefloydshow.tv than the URL necessary to get to it directly on Stage It, which is why I set that up for you. That's another thing that costs money. Please come to that. People can actually tip there and help us out a little more, give us a little more money. I've set that up here as well. If you look in the description on whatever service you're watching this on, there's a link to send money to help us out here. Send us $5, $10, $1. I don't care. Please. It helps keep this on the air, and I want to keep this going because I promised Floyd before he passed away that I would not let people forget him. He said, please, don't let people forget me. And I promised him I would not. That's why I keep doing this. It's an honor for me to be able to do this. It's an honor for me to talk to you and get you to laugh and remember and have fun with the stuff that we did all those years ago and the crazy junk that happens every day. Please tell your friends. Let's get more people here. The more people that come here and to Tuesday night, the better this is for all of us. It'll be great to have 1,000 people here, and 1,000 people can listen to it anytime they want on the podcast or Tuesday night at 8 Eastern on This Was the Uncle Floyd Show. And remember, the most important thing to any show is you guys, the audience. Floyd was so touched knowing that you guys still enjoyed the stuff we did, and he wanted you to know that you are more important than anything else. We do this because you're there. If you're not there, we have nothing to do. So please tell your friends. Let's get some more people here. And now, because of the fact I'm so bummed out by the Les Paul thing, I'm going to play a song by Floyd that's not as upbeat as his usual stuff. It's a ballad. It's a well-known ballad. And I think he does it very, very well. And it shows the artistry that he had on the piano. So I'm Scott Gordon, and I'll see you here again next week, and I'll see you Tuesday night at 8. I'm there live, and I answer questions there as well. This is the Uncle Floyd Podcast, number 87, and we'll see you again next week. Here's Uncle Floyd.
This day and age we're living in gives cause for apprehension with speed and new invention and things like third dimension. Yet get a trifle weary with Mr. Einstein's theories. We must learn to relax, learn to relieve the tension, no matter what the progress or what may yet be proved. The simple facts of life are such they cannot be removed. You must remember this: a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is still a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings, as time goes by. Now women and love songs are never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate. That nobody can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. Women and love songs are never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate. That nobody can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. No matter what the future brings, as time goes by.
This program was produced in the studios of Scott Gordon Enterprises, Incorporated in Paramus, New Jersey.